Back of the line, boy. Your kind doesn't get special treatment here. TSA, Agent Bradley Morrison's voice cuts through Denver International Airport's security checkpoint like a blade. A well-dressed black man in an expensive suit stops dead in his tracks. Morrison crosses his arms, blocking the path with a satisfied smirk. "What's wrong?" "Cat got your tongue?" Morrison continues, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let me guess. You're one of those types who thinks rules don't apply to them." The man, Darius Washington, remains perfectly calm. Morrison steps closer, invading his personal space while making an exaggerated show of pulling on latex gloves. Other passengers freeze. Phones emerge. Children ask their parents what's happening. Morrison has no idea he just made the biggest mistake of his entire career. What happened next exposed a corruption scandal that would rock the TSA to its core and prove that sometimes the person you choose to humiliate has more power than you could ever imagine. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated differently because of how they look and wondered if you'd have the courage to speak up? But let's back up for a moment. Who exactly are these two men whose paths are about to collide in the most explosive way possible? Bradley Morrison has been a TSA agent at Denver International for 8 years. At 42, he carries himself with the swagger of someone who believes his uniform grants him unlimited authority. His colleagues know him as the guy who always seems to find problems with certain passengers. The complaints have piled up over the years, 3 formal grievances about discriminatory behavior, all quietly swept under the rug by overwhelmed supervisors. Morrison's morning routine never changes. He arrives early, grabs coffee from the employee break room, and positions himself at checkpoint 3, the busiest lane. He likes the action. More importantly, he likes control. Today feels different, though. He's been on edge since yesterday's staff meeting where Supervisor Jennifer Carter mentioned federal oversight reviews coming soon. Whatever that means. "Morning, Brad," calls out his colleague Sarah Martinez as she sets up the adjacent screening station. "You seem tense today." Morrison shrugs. "Just keeping America safe, you know? Someone's got to do the real work around here." Sarah has learned not to engage when Morrison gets into these moods. She's witnessed his behavior firsthand, the way he becomes suddenly thorough with certain passengers while waving others through with barely a glance. She's thought about saying something, but Morrison has seniority and friends in management. Easier to just focus on her own lane. Meanwhile, 3 gates away, Darius Washington sits in the departure lounge reviewing documents on his tablet. To other passengers, he looks like any other business traveler. Expensive suit, leather briefcase, focused demeanor. They can't see what's really on his screen. Detailed inspection protocols for Transportation Security Administration facilities. Darius Washington isn't just another passenger. He's a senior safety inspector for the Federal Aviation Administration, 12 years into a career that has taken him to airports across the country. His job is simple in concept, complex in execution. Conduct unannounced evaluations of aviation security protocols and identify systemic failures before they become disasters. Today's mission brought him to Denver International specifically to evaluate TSA checkpoint procedures. His briefcase contains federal credentials, audio recording equipment, and detailed notes on what he's already observed during his 2-hour surveillance of the security area. The patterns he's documented paint a troubling picture. His phone buzzes with a text from his supervisor in Washington, D.C. "Any initial observations on the Denver facility?" Darius types back carefully. "Significant concerns about differential treatment protocols. We'll have a comprehensive report after direct interaction." He has no idea how prophetic those words will prove to be. What Darius has already witnessed would shock most travelers. In just 2 hours of observation, he's documented Morrison's behavior with surgical precision. Morrison's screening intensity varies dramatically based on passenger appearance. The subtle but unmistakable pattern of random additional searches, the casual comments to colleagues that reveal underlying bias. But Darius needs more than observations. Federal oversight requires direct evidence of procedural violations. That's why he's about to walk through Morrison's checkpoint himself, recording equipment activated, federal credentials in his briefcase, ready to document whatever happens next. Morrison, meanwhile, has spotted his next target. Something about the well-dressed black man approaching his station triggers every prejudiced instinct he's developed over 8 years of unchecked authority. The expensive suit doesn't matter. The calm, professional demeanor doesn't matter. All Morrison sees is an opportunity to flex his power. He doesn't notice the small recording device clipped to the man's jacket. He doesn't see the way Darius's eyes systematically catalog every security camera angle. He completely misses the federal credentials visible through the briefcase's transparent pocket. Morrison is about to learn that sometimes the person you choose to humiliate is exactly the person with power to end your career. Other passengers in line begin to sense the tension. A businessman in front of Darius pulls out his phone. A family with young children exchanges worried glances. A college student starts recording. They're all about to become witnesses to something that will expose systematic corruption and prove that justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. The stage is set. Federal authority is about to collide with unchecked prejudice. The only question now is how devastating the aftermath will be. Darius Washington approaches checkpoint 3 with the measured pace of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. His recording device is active. His federal credentials are positioned for easy access. His mental checklist of TSA protocol violations is already forming. Morrison's predatory instincts kick in immediately. "Hold up there, Chief," Morrison says, stepping directly into Darius's path. "Looks like you're in for some extra attention today." Darius places his shoes in the bin methodically. "I'm just trying to catch my flight, sir." "Sir?" Morrison laughs, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Oh, we got ourselves a polite one today." That's what they all say before we find their stash. The businessman behind Darius pulls out his phone and starts recording. A mother shields her children's eyes while simultaneously filming. Morrison doesn't notice. He's too focused on his prey. "Remove your jacket," Morrison commands. "And that fancy briefcase needs special screening." Darius complies without resistance. He drapes his suit jacket over the bin, ensuring the small recording device remains hidden but active. "Of course. Whatever you need to do." Morrison's eyes narrow. The compliance throws him off. Usually his targets get defensive, argumentative. That's when he can really escalate. But this man's calm confidence bothers him in ways he can't articulate. "Sarah?" Morrison calls to his colleague. "I'm going to need backup on this one. Got a feeling about this guy." Sarah Martinez looks up from her station, noticing the growing crowd of recording passengers. "Brad, maybe we should just..." "Just what?" Morrison snaps. "Do our job?" "That's exactly what I'm doing." He begins the pat-down with unnecessary aggression, his hands lingering longer than protocol requires. Darius remains perfectly still, his mind cataloging every violation. Excessive force during screening. Check. Discriminatory selection for additional screening. Check. Unprofessional conduct in front of passengers. Check. "You seem awfully calm for someone about to get caught," Morrison whispers close to Darius's ear. "What is it? Cocaine? Heroin? Or maybe something worse?" "I don't use drugs," Darius responds quietly. "That's what they all say." Morrison's voice gets louder, performing for his audience. "But I've got a sixth sense about these things. 20 years in law enforcement teaches you to read people." Actually, Morrison has never been in law enforcement outside of TSA, but lying comes easily when you're drunk on authority. The pat-down intensifies. Morrison's hands move to Darius's jacket pockets, feeling around with theatrical suspicion. Other passengers grow uncomfortable. The college student recording whispers to her friend, "This is messed up." "What's this?" Morrison announces triumphantly, even though he hasn't found anything yet. Something hard in the jacket pocket. "Sir, I'm going to need you to remain very still." Darius knows what's coming. He's seen this play before in other airports, other cities. The setup is always the same. He tenses slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation of documenting the most serious federal crime he's ever witnessed. Morrison reaches into the jacket pocket with exaggerated caution. His hand emerges holding a small plastic baggie containing white powder. Gasps echo through the checkpoint. Phones capture every angle. Children ask their parents what's happening. "Well, well, well," Morrison says, holding the baggie high for everyone to see. "Look what we have here. Just like I said, they always have something to hide." "That's not mine," Darius states clearly, his voice carrying to every recording device in the area. "Oh, it's not yours," Morrison mocks. "Then how did it get in your jacket pocket?" "Magic?" "You put it there," Darius says calmly, "and you know it." The accusation hits Morrison like a slap. His face reddens with genuine anger now, not just performed authority. "Are you accusing me of planting evidence?" "That's a serious allegation, buddy." "I'm stating a fact," Darius replies. "That substance was not in my possession when I arrived at this checkpoint." Morrison steps closer, invading personal space again. "You know what I think? I think you're one of those types who blames everyone else for your problems. Can't take responsibility for your own actions." The businessman recording speaks up. "Hey man, I've been filming this whole thing." Something doesn't look right here. Morrison whirls around. "Sir, I need you to put that phone away. This is a security matter." "Actually, I have every right to record in a public area," the businessman responds. "And what I just saw looked like you planted that bag." "You didn't see anything," Morrison snarls. "And if you don't put that phone away, you're going to find yourself in the same situation as your friend here." But it's too late. Multiple recordings are already uploaded to social media. Hashtag #TSAABUSE starts trending within minutes. The college student live streams to her Instagram followers. The family with children sends videos to local news stations. Supervisor Jennifer Carter finally appears, drawn by the commotion. She takes one look at the crowd, the cameras, the obvious tension, and realizes her worst nightmare is unfolding. "What's the situation here, Morrison?" she asks, though she can already guess. "Caught this guy with drugs," Morrison says, waving the baggie. "Classic case. He's trying to claim I planted evidence, if you can believe that." Chen studies Darius carefully. Something about his demeanor doesn't fit. Most people caught with drugs are either belligerent or panicked. This man seems almost amused. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification," Carter says to Darius. "Of course," Darius replies, "but I'd prefer to handle this through proper channels. I believe you need to contact the Denver police for drug possession allegations." Chen nods, though something in his phrasing bothers her. Proper channels isn't the language most passengers use. Morrison, emboldened by what he sees as support from his supervisor, continues his performance. "Like I always say, Carter, trust your instincts. I spotted this guy from 50 feet away. Something about him just screamed trouble." "What exactly screamed trouble?" Darius asks. "My clothes? My behavior? Or something else?" The question hangs in the air like a challenge. Morrison realizes he's being baited but can't help himself. "Your attitude," Morrison says, "acting like you're better than everyone else. Like rules don't apply to you." "What rules have I broken?" Darius presses. "The rule about bringing drugs through airport security," Morrison shouts, losing his composure entirely. "Before you allegedly found those drugs," Darius clarifies, "what rules had I broken that justified your initial hostility?" Morrison opens his mouth, then closes it. The question exposes the truth everyone already knows, but no one wants to say out loud. Chen realizes the situation is spiraling beyond her control. "I'm calling the police," she announces. As she reaches for her radio, Darius speaks quietly. "Before you do that, Supervisor Carter, I think there are some things you should know." Something in his tone makes everyone pause. Morrison, Carter, the recording passengers. They all sense a shift in the dynamic. Like what? Carter asks. Darius reaches slowly toward his briefcase. Like who I really am. Morrison's triumph begins to curdle into unease. Why isn't this guy more upset? Why does he seem so confident? And why does Carter suddenly look like she's seen a ghost? The Denver police arrive within 8 minutes of Carter's call. Officer Maria Rodriguez and her partner, Officer James Kim, have seen this routine before. TSA drug busts usually involve panicked passengers, obvious guilt, and straightforward arrests. This scene feels different. What do we have here? Rodriguez asks, surveying the crowd of recording passengers and the unusually calm suspect. Morrison steps forward eagerly. Caught this guy red-handed with narcotics. Found this baggie of what looks like cocaine in his jacket pocket. He waves the evidence bag triumphantly. Classic smuggling attempt. Rodriguez studies the alleged drugs, then looks at Darius. Something doesn't add up. In her 15 years of law enforcement, drug smugglers don't usually wear $1,000 suits and maintain perfect composure when caught. Sir, what's your name? Rodriguez asks Darius. Darius Washington, and before we proceed, I'd like to make one phone call and secure my briefcase through proper federal channels. Rodriguez raises an eyebrow. Federal channels? My briefcase contains sensitive materials that require specific handling protocols, Darius explains calmly. I'm sure you understand the importance of following proper procedures. Morrison scoffs. He's trying to sound important, officer. Classic deflection tactic. Probably has more drugs in that briefcase. Officer Kim steps closer to examine the evidence bag. Something bothers him about the setup. Morrison, walk me through exactly how you found this. Morrison launches into his story with practiced confidence. The subject was acting suspicious from the moment he approached my checkpoint. Evasive eye contact, nervous behavior, the whole 9 yards. During the routine pat-down, I felt this hard object in his jacket pocket. I was recording the entire interaction, the businessman interrupts, holding up his phone. I've got everything on video. Rodriguez turns to him with interest. Sir, I'm going to need a copy of that footage. Already uploaded to the cloud, the businessman replies. And honestly, officer, what I saw looked like the TSA agent planted that bag. Morrison's face reddens. That's a lie. This passenger is clearly trying to avoid responsibility for his criminal behavior. Then you won't mind if we review the security footage, Rodriguez says evenly. Chen, who has been quietly panicking about the implications, speaks up. Of course, officer. We have full camera coverage of all checkpoint areas. Darius remains perfectly still throughout this exchange, his mind cataloging every procedural violation. Improper evidence handling. Failure to immediately segregate the suspect from the accusing officer. No Miranda rights. The list grows longer by the minute. Officer Kim notices Darius's unusual calm. Sir, you seem remarkably composed for someone facing felony drug charges. Any particular reason? I'm innocent, Darius replies simply. And I have complete faith that the truth will emerge through proper investigation. The truth? Morrison explodes. The truth is in that evidence bag. How much more proof do you need? Rodriguez's instincts kick in. She's seen enough planted evidence cases to recognize the signs. Morrison's overconfidence, the convenient discovery, the suspect's lack of panic, the multiple witness recordings. Morrison, I need you to step back while we process this scene, she orders. Step back? I'm the one who caught him. Step back. Now. The authority in Rodriguez's voice cuts through Morrison's bluster. He reluctantly moves away, but his agitation grows with each passing minute. Officer Kim approaches Darius privately. Sir, off the record, is there anything you want to tell me before we continue with this arrest? Darius considers the question carefully. Officer, I appreciate your professionalism. All I ask is that you follow standard procedures completely. Document everything. Review all available evidence. and please ensure my briefcase is handled appropriately. Something in his phrasing triggers Kim's cop instincts. What kind of work do you do, Mr. Washington? Federal service, Darius answers truthfully but vaguely. Meanwhile, the college student's live stream has exploded across social media. Comments pour in from viewers who recognize the signs of racial profiling. # justice. For Darius starts trending alongside # TSA abuse. Local news stations begin dispatching crews to the airport. Chen realizes the situation is spiraling beyond her control. Officer Rodriguez, perhaps we should move this to a more private area? Good idea, Rodriguez agrees. She turns to the crowd of passengers. I need contact information from anyone who witnessed this incident. The businessman steps forward first. I've got the whole thing on video. Clear footage of the pat-down and the discovery of the drugs. The way that agent was talking to him was disgusting, adds the mother with children. We recorded it too. Morrison watches his narrative crumble as witness after witness volunteers evidence that contradicts his version of events. But he's too deep in the lie to back down now. These people don't understand police work, Morrison tells Rodriguez. They see what they want to see. Rodriguez has heard enough. Mr. Washington, you're going to need to come with us for processing. You have the right to remain silent. As she begins the Miranda warning, Darius nods appreciatively. Thank you for following proper procedures, officer. It means more than you know. The strange comment makes both officers exchange glances. Who thanks police for proper procedures while being arrested for drug possession? As they escort Darius toward the airport police station, his briefcase secured and his rights properly read, Morrison finally allows himself to smile. He's won. The troublemaker is going to jail, and his authority has been validated in front of everyone. Morrison has no idea that his victory is about to become the most spectacular defeat of his career. The briefcase that Darius insisted on securing contains items that will turn this entire narrative inside out. Federal credentials that will transform him from suspect to investigator. Recording equipment that captured every word of Morrison's prejudiced rants. Documentation that will expose a pattern of systematic abuse. Justice is coming. Morrison just doesn't know it yet. At the airport police station, Officer Rodriguez begins the standard booking process. Darius sits calmly across from her desk, his secured briefcase beside him. The composure that bothered Morrison now fascinates the experienced officer. Mr. Washington, before we continue, I need to ask, you mentioned federal service. What kind of federal service? Darius looks directly at Rodriguez. Officer, I appreciate your thoroughness. May I access my briefcase to provide proper identification? Something in his tone makes Rodriguez pause. She's processed thousands of suspects over her career. None of them have ever asked to access evidence to provide proper identification with such confidence. Go ahead, she says, curiosity overriding standard protocol. Darius opens the briefcase with deliberate precision. Rodriguez leans forward as he removes a leather credential case. Her expression changes the moment she sees the gold badge and federal identification card. Federal Aviation Administration, Darius says quietly. Senior Safety Inspector badge number 2847. I've been conducting an unannounced evaluation of TSA security protocols at Denver International Airport. Rodriguez stares at the credentials, her mind reprocessing everything that just happened. You're a federal inspector? For 12 years, Darius confirms. And what your agent Morrison just did constitutes multiple federal crimes. Officer Kim, overhearing from the next desk, walks over and examines the credentials. Holy shit, he whispers. Rodriguez, do you realize what this means? Rodriguez is already reaching for her phone. I need to call Captain Martinez immediately. But Darius holds up a hand. Before you do that, there's more you need to know. He reaches back into the briefcase and produces a small digital recording device. This has been recorded since I approached Morrison's checkpoint. Every word of his discriminatory comments, Every detail of the evidence planting. Everything. The blood drains from Rodriguez's face. You recorded the whole thing? Colorado is a one-party consent state, Darius explains. This recording is completely legal and admissible in federal court. Kim sits down heavily. We just arrested a federal inspector who was conducting an official investigation. No, Darius corrects. You followed proper procedures after witnessing what appeared to be a crime. Morrison is the one who committed multiple federal offenses, evidence tampering, civil rights violations, obstruction of a federal investigation. Rodriguez's radio crackles. Dispatcher. Unit 247, be advised. Multiple media outlets are requesting information about the TSA incident. Captain wants an immediate briefing. Tell Captain Martinez I need him down here now, Rodriguez responds. Priority 1. Darius continues removing items from his briefcase. Official FAA documentation. His investigation notes from the morning's surveillance. Detailed observations of Morrison's pattern of discriminatory behavior with other passengers. I've been watching Morrison for 2 hours before our interaction, Darius explains. Documented 14 instances of differential treatment based on passenger appearance. He selected African American, Hispanic, and Middle Eastern passengers for additional screening at a rate 4 times higher than white passengers. Officer Kim reads over the meticulous notes. This is a federal case. Multiple federal cases, Darius corrects. Civil rights violations, evidence tampering, false imprisonment, obstruction of justice. And that's just from today. Rodriguez's phone rings. Captain Martinez. She answers immediately. Captain, you need to get down here right now. We have a situation. No, sir. Bigger than that. Sir, we just arrested a federal aviation inspector who was conducting an undercover investigation of TSA procedures. Even through the phone, they can hear Captain Martinez's explosive response. Meanwhile, back at the security checkpoint, Morrison is basking in his perceived victory. He doesn't know that Supervisor Carter has just received a call that will destroy his world. Morrison, Carter calls out, her voice tight with panic. I need to see you in my office. Now. What's this about? Morrison asks, still confident. Just come. Now. In Carter's office, her phone rings. It's Captain Martinez from Airport Police. Ms. Carter, I need to know everything about your employee, Bradley Morrison. Every complaint, every incident report, every performance review. And I need it in the next 10 minutes. Chen's hands shake as she pulls Morrison's personnel file. 3 formal complaints about discriminatory behavior. 2 incidents of excessive force during screenings. Multiple witness statements from passengers about unprofessional conduct. Morrison, Carter says slowly, what exactly happened at Checkpoint 3? I caught a drug smuggler, Morrison says proudly. Textbook case. Guy tried to claim I planted evidence, but we both know that's ridiculous. Chen stares at him. The man you arrested. Did you run his identification through any federal databases? Why would I do that? He's just another criminal trying to get drugs through security. Morrison, you need to sit down. I don't need to sit down. I need to get back to my checkpoint and do my job. Chen's phone rings again. This time it's the TSA Federal Security Director. Chen, I just got a call from FAA headquarters. One of their senior inspectors was conducting an evaluation at your facility today. Please tell me your people didn't interfere with a federal investigation. Chen looks at Morrison, who is finally starting to realize something is very wrong. Sir, Carter says into the phone, I think we have a problem. Back at the police station, Captain Martinez arrives looking like he's aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He examines Darius's credentials, listens to portions of the recording, and reviews the documentation. Mr. Washington, Martinez says formally, on behalf of the Denver Police Department, I apologize for this situation. All charges against you are being dropped immediately. Thank you, Captain. But I hope you understand that federal charges against Agent Morrison will be filed within the hour. Martinez nods grimly. What do you need from us? Secure the evidence Morrison planted. Collect all security footage from the checkpoint. Document everything according to federal evidence protocols, and prepare for FBI involvement. Rodriguez, still processing the magnitude of what just happened, asks, "How long have you been planning this investigation?" "This wasn't planned," Darius admits. "I was here to evaluate general security protocols. Morrison's behavior this morning was an unexpected opportunity to document systematic civil rights violations." Officer Kim shakes his head. "So Morrison basically walked into a federal sting operation without knowing it." "Morrison walked into his own destruction," Darius corrects. "I was just there to document it." The irony is perfect. Morrison's own prejudice and arrogance led him to target the one person with the authority and evidence to end his career. He planted drugs on a federal inspector who was recording everything. He committed multiple federal crimes in front of witnesses while being officially investigated. Morrison's victory has become his complete and utter defeat. He just doesn't know it yet. Within 1 hour of the credentials being revealed, Denver International Airport transforms into the center of a federal investigation. FBI agents arrive alongside FAA oversight officials and TSA internal affairs investigators. The quiet corridors of the administrative offices buzz with urgent activity that Morrison remains completely unaware of. Morrison is still working Checkpoint 3, basking in what he believes is his greatest career triumph, when Supervisor Carter approaches with 2 men in dark suits and stern expressions. "Morrison, you need to come with us immediately," Carter says, her voice barely steady, hands visibly shaking. "What's this about now?" Morrison asks, genuinely annoyed at being pulled away from what he considers his moment of glory. "I've got passengers to screen. I just made the biggest drug bust of my career." "Your checkpoint duties are suspended pending immediate investigation," says the taller man, flashing FBI credentials with practiced authority. "Agent Thompson, Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is Agent Davis from the TSA Internal Affairs Division." Morrison's smugness falters for the first time since the incident began. "Investigation? What investigation? I caught a major drug smuggler. I should be getting a commendation, not harassment." Agent Thompson's expression remains professionally neutral, but his eyes are ice cold. "Mr. Morrison, we need to discuss the incident involving Darius Washington in detail." "The drug dealer? What about him?" "Case closed as far as I'm concerned." The 3 men escort Morrison through increasingly deserted corridors to a conference room where the walls seem lined with federal officials. Morrison's confidence evaporates like steam as he recognizes the gravity of the assembled authority. FBI agents, FAA investigators, TSA Internal Affairs, even representatives from the Department of Homeland Security. "Morrison," Agent Davis begins, consulting a thick file. "Tell us exactly what happened during your interaction with Mr. Washington. Start from the beginning." Morrison launches into his well-rehearsed story with renewed confidence. "The subject was acting suspicious from the moment I spotted him approaching my checkpoint. Evasive eye contact, nervous behavior, expensive clothes that didn't match his attitude. During the routine pat-down, I discovered illegal narcotics concealed in his jacket pocket. Textbook smuggling case, really." "You discovered narcotics," Agent Thompson repeats slowly, making notes. "Walk us through exactly how that discovery occurred." "Professional experience, Agent. Felt a hard object during the standard security search. Reached into his pocket and found a baggie containing white powder. Obviously cocaine or similar controlled substances. Agent Davis slides a tablet across the polished conference table. "Mr. Morrison, I want you to watch this security camera footage very carefully." The high-definition security footage plays in crystal-clear detail. Morrison watches himself approach Darius with obvious hostility. The audio picks up his opening comments with devastating clarity. "Back of the line, boy. Your kind doesn't get special treatment here." Morrison shifts uncomfortably in his chair. "I was maintaining security protocols. Some passengers require firmer handling to ensure compliance." "Based on what specific criteria?" Agent Thompson asks pointedly. Experience. You develop professional instincts after years on the job. Threat assessment becomes second nature. The video continues playing. They watch Morrison deliberately select Darius for additional screening, despite Darius displaying no suspicious behavior whatsoever. The pat-down begins normally. Then Morrison's movements become highly suspicious. "Stop the video right there," Agent Davis commands. "Morrison, explain exactly what you're doing with your left hand at this moment." On screen, Morrison's left hand moves deliberately to his own pocket, while his right hand continues the pat-down. The movement is subtle but unmistakable to trained federal investigators. "I'm conducting a thorough search according to established protocols," Morrison says weakly, sweat forming on his forehead. "Your left hand goes to your own pocket," Agent Thompson observes with prosecutorial precision. "Then you clearly transfer something to Mr. Washington's jacket. Then you discover contraband in that exact location." Morrison's face goes ashen. "That's not... You're completely misinterpreting standard search procedures." Agent Davis slides another device across the table, a digital audio recorder. "This contains a complete audio recording of your entire interaction with Mr. Washington. Would you like to hear it?" The recording begins with Morrison's discriminatory comments, captured with perfect digital clarity by Darius's federal-grade recording equipment. Every word of prejudice, every hostile exchange, every moment of the evidence planting is documented with courtroom-quality audio. Morrison's recorded voice fills the room. "Let me guess. You're going to tell me you don't know how those drugs got in your bag, right?" The conference room falls completely silent as the implications sink in like lead weights. Morrison had predicted finding drugs before conducting any search whatsoever. "Morrison," Agent Thompson says with quiet intensity, "do you understand the full gravity of your situation?" Morrison desperately tries to salvage his crumbling narrative. "You people don't understand the reality of airport security. These individuals, they're always causing problems. I was protecting national security from obvious threats." "These people?" Agent Davis repeats with dangerous calm. "Explain exactly what you mean by that phrase." Morrison realizes his catastrophic mistake too late. "I meant suspicious individuals who match certain behavioral profiles." "Mr. Morrison," Agent Thompson interrupts with finality, "let me clarify something critical for you. The man you racially targeted, planted federal evidence on, and falsely arrested is Senior FAA Safety Inspector Darius Washington. He was conducting an official federal investigation of this facility." The words hit Morrison like a sledgehammer to the chest. His mouth opens and closes soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. "You planted evidence," Agent Davis continues relentlessly, "on a federal investigator who was recording your behavior as part of an official government evaluation. You committed multiple federal felonies while under direct federal surveillance." Morrison's world collapses in real time. "Federal investigator? But he's black," Agent Thompson finishes coldly. "Yes, Mr. Morrison. Federal investigators come in all colors. Your racist assumptions just destroyed your career." 12 years of distinguished federal service, Agent Davis confirms. "Currently conducting unannounced security evaluations nationwide as part of a Department of Homeland Security initiative." You didn't just target a random passenger, Morrison. You targeted the one person in this airport with the authority and evidence to completely destroy your life. Morrison slumps in his chair like a deflated balloon. "I didn't know. I couldn't have known." "You didn't know because you never bothered to check identification before launching into discriminatory behavior," Agent Davis states with bureaucratic precision. "Your prejudice blinded you to everything except skin color and your own inflated sense of authority." The interrogation continues for nearly 3 hours as federal investigators systematically document every aspect of Morrison's pattern of discriminatory behavior. His personnel file, previously sanitized by negligent supervision, reveals complaint after complaint he thought were safely buried. Sarah Martinez, Morrison's checkpoint colleague, provides devastating testimony via video conference. Brad always joked about finding problems with certain passengers. He'd say things like, "Watch me nail this one," when minorities approached his checkpoint. It was like a game to him. Other TSA employees corroborate the systematic pattern. Morrison's behavior wasn't isolated incidents of poor judgment. It was deliberate, systematic discrimination that management had willfully ignored for years. Meanwhile, Supervisor Carter faces her own professional reckoning in a separate conference room down the hall. Ms. Carter, the TSA Federal Security Director, asks with barely controlled anger, exactly how many formal discrimination complaints were filed against Morrison in the past 24 months? 3 documented complaints, Carter admits, her career flashing before her eyes. And what specific disciplinary action was taken? Chen's voice barely rises above a whisper. Verbal counseling sessions. We documented the incidents but didn't pursue formal disciplinary procedures. You documented federal civil rights violations and took no meaningful corrective action whatsoever. We hoped the verbal counseling would be sufficient to modify his behavior. Ms. Carter, you had 3 documented cases of discriminatory behavior, and you allowed this employee to continue screening passengers without additional oversight, retraining, or disciplinary action. The negligent supervision becomes crystal clear. Carter had the authority and responsibility to address Morrison's behavior, but consistently chose the path of least administrative resistance. Her systematic failure to act enabled the escalation that led directly to federal crimes. Back in Morrison's interrogation room, Agent Thompson delivers the final devastating blow. Morrison, you're being formally charged with evidence tampering under federal law, civil rights violations under Title VI, obstruction of a federal investigation, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to violate constitutional rights. These are serious felony charges carrying substantial prison sentences. Morrison's hastily summoned lawyer tries desperately to limit the catastrophic damage. My client was performing his assigned duties as he understood them under existing protocols. Your client planted evidence on a federal inspector while making racially discriminatory statements that were digitally recorded. Agent Davis responds with prosecutorial finality. This isn't a procedural misunderstanding. This is systematic criminal behavior with clear criminal intent. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming. High-definition security footage showing the evidence planting. Digital audio recordings of discriminatory comments. Multiple witness testimony establishing a clear pattern of behavior. Comprehensive documentation of Morrison's previous complaints and supervisory failures. Morrison finally speaks, his voice broken. What happens to me now? Agent Thompson answers with bureaucratic matter-of-factness. You're terminated from federal employment immediately with prejudice. Federal criminal charges will be filed within 24 hours. The FBI will conduct a comprehensive investigation of other passengers who may have been victims of similar treatment. And Mr. Washington's official report will trigger a nationwide review of TSA procedures and training protocols. Morrison's 8-year federal career ends in complete disgrace. His actions exposed not just his own systematic criminality, but revealed catastrophic failures in TSA oversight, training, and accountability systems. The man who thought his uniform granted unlimited power over passengers had just learned that federal authority flows both ways, and he was on the wrong side of it. 6 months later, the transformation at Denver International Airport is unmistakable. Body cameras are now mandatory for all TSA agents conducting enhanced screenings. Bias training occurs monthly instead of annually. A civilian oversight committee reviews every discrimination complaint within 48 hours. Bradley Morrison sits in federal court as Judge Patricia Hendricks reads his sentence. Mr. Morrison, you violated the civil rights of a federal investigator while committing evidence tampering, false imprisonment, and obstruction of justice. These crimes strike at the heart of constitutional protections and public trust in federal agencies. Morrison's lawyer had argued for leniency, claiming his client acted out of misguided patriotism rather than malicious intent. The judge wasn't buying it. The evidence shows a pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning years, enabled by supervisory negligence. This wasn't a single mistake. It was systematic abuse of authority. Judge Hendricks continues. You are sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. You are permanently barred from federal employment and must pay full restitution to Mr. Washington for damages. Morrison's wife covers her face in the gallery. His teenage son refuses to make eye contact. The man who thought he was protecting America from troublemakers has become a convicted felon whose actions endangered the very security he claimed to defend. The criminal conviction sends shockwaves through TSA facilities nationwide. Agent after agent receives enhanced training on civil rights law. Supervisors attend mandatory workshops on addressing discrimination complaints. The message is clear. The old culture of looking the other way has ended. Jennifer Carter fares better than Morrison but still faces consequences. Demoted from supervisor to line agent, she completes 6 months of intensive management training focused on civil rights enforcement. Her federal employment record permanently notes her failure to address documented discrimination. I should have acted sooner, Carter admits during her mandatory counseling sessions. I prioritized administrative convenience over passenger rights. That decision enabled Morrison's escalation to criminal behavior. The broader reforms extend far beyond individual consequences. Darius Washington's comprehensive report triggers the most significant TSA policy overhaul since the agency's creation. Random selection protocols are now computerized to eliminate human bias. Enhanced screening requires supervisor approval and video documentation. Most importantly, the Department of Homeland Security establishes an independent civil rights division specifically for aviation security. Discrimination complaints bypass local supervisors and go directly to federal investigators. The passenger witnesses from that morning receive vindication too. The businessman who recorded the incident testifies before Congress about the importance of citizen documentation in exposing civil rights violations. The college student's live stream becomes part of a documentary about systematic bias in federal agencies. What we witnessed wasn't just one bad agent, the businessman tells congressional investigators. It was a system that enabled discrimination through willful ignorance. Morrison couldn't have operated that way for years without supervisory complicity. Darius Washington, meanwhile, continues his inspection work with enhanced authority. His Denver report leads to similar investigations at 15 other major airports, uncovering comparable patterns of discriminatory behavior and supervisory negligence. Morrison's case wasn't unique, Darius explains to a Senate Oversight Committee. It was representative of broader cultural problems within TSA. Individual accountability is necessary, but insufficient. We need systemic reform. The statistical results speak volumes. Discrimination complaints at Denver International dropped by 78% in the 6 months following Morrison's arrest. Enhanced screening selections become statistically random rather than racially skewed. Passenger satisfaction surveys show marked improvement in perceived fairness. Other airports implementing similar reforms report comparable improvements. The Morrison case becomes a cautionary tale studied in federal law enforcement academies nationwide. But perhaps the most significant change is cultural. TSA agents now understand that discriminatory behavior carries real consequences. Supervisors know that ignoring complaints can end careers. Passengers feel empowered to document and report unfair treatment. The irony of Morrison's downfall remains perfect. His racial prejudice led him to target the one person with the authority to expose and prosecute his systematic discrimination. His assumption that a black man couldn't possibly have federal authority became the evidence for his own destruction. Morrison's former colleagues at Checkpoint 3 work under new protocols that would have prevented his crimes. Random selections are computerized. Enhanced screenings require justification. Body cameras record every interaction. It's a completely different environment now, Sarah Martinez observes. Agents can't just decide someone looks suspicious based on appearance. There has to be actual behavioral justification, documented and reviewed. The case also demonstrates how individual courage can trigger institutional change. Darius Washington's decision to document Morrison's behavior, rather than simply endure it, exposed systematic failures and saved countless future passengers from similar treatment. Justice was served not just through Morrison's conviction, but through the comprehensive reforms that ensure his crimes cannot be repeated. The system that enabled his discrimination has been dismantled and rebuilt with accountability at its foundation. Morrison learned too late that federal authority flows both ways, and prejudice is the weakest foundation for power. His uniform couldn't protect him from the consequences of violating the constitutional rights of the very citizens he was supposed to serve. The troublemaker Morrison thought he was arresting turned out to be the federal inspector who would reform the entire system. Perfect justice, captured on tape, broadcast to the world. Today, Darius Washington continues his work as a senior FAA safety inspector, traveling to airports across America with the same quiet professionalism that caught Morrison off guard. But now his inspections carry additional weight, the authority of someone who proved that individual courage can reshape entire systems. The recording device that captured Morrison's crimes still accompanies Darius on every assignment. A reminder that evidence matters more than assumptions, documentation trumps discrimination, and federal authority serves justice regardless of who wields it. Morrison, meanwhile, serves his sentence in federal prison, his uniform replaced by orange coveralls, his authority reduced to nothing. Fellow inmates know his story. The TSA agent who planted drugs on a federal inspector because he couldn't see past skin color. Even in prison, prejudice carries consequences. The broader transformation continues, rippling through American aviation security. The Morrison case is now taught at every TSA training academy as an example of how discrimination destroys careers and endangers national security. New agents learn that bias isn't just morally wrong, it's professionally suicidal. But the most important changes happen at the human level, in individual interactions between agents and passengers. The body cameras capture respectful exchanges. The computerized random selection eliminates discriminatory targeting. The oversight committees ensure complaints receive serious investigation. Passengers notice the difference immediately. Families travel without fear of discriminatory treatment. Business travelers like Darius move through security based on behavior, not appearance. The constitutional promise of equal protection becomes operational reality rather than hollow rhetoric. The college student whose live stream helped expose Morrison's crimes graduates with a degree in civil rights law, inspired by witnessing how individual documentation can trigger institutional justice. The businessman who recorded the evidence continues traveling with his phone ready, knowing that citizen journalism protects constitutional rights. Airport workers across the country understand the lesson. In an age of smartphones and federal oversight, discrimination has nowhere to hide. Every interaction is potentially recorded, every complaint potentially investigated, every abuse potentially prosecuted. Morrison's story serves as both warning and inspiration. Warning to those who would abuse authority based on prejudice. Your victims might have more power than you imagine. Inspiration to those who face discrimination. Document everything, report systematically. Trust that evidence eventually defeats bias. The irony remains perfect and instructive. Morrison's racial prejudice led him to target the one person with federal authority to end his career. His assumptions about power and privilege proved catastrophically wrong. His crimes provided the evidence for comprehensive reform. Sometimes justice comes from unexpected places. Sometimes the person you underestimate has exactly the authority you fear most. Sometimes systematic change begins with individual courage to document and report injustice. The next time you witness unfair treatment based on appearance, Remember Darius Washington's story. Remember that federal investigators come in all colors. Authority flows in unexpected directions, and prejudice creates its own evidence for destruction. Remember that body cameras, smartphones, and federal oversight protect constitutional rights only when citizens have the courage to use them. Remember that systemic change requires both individual accountability and institutional reform. Most importantly, remember that the person being mistreated might be the exact person with power to transform the entire system. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wondered if speaking up would make a difference? Share your experiences in the comments. If this story gives you hope for justice, hit that like button. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories proving that accountability and courage can reshape broken systems. Because sometimes the troublemaker turns out to be the federal inspector who changes everything.